And we're live. It is Monday, September 6th, Labor Day, and also Rosh Hashanah. Happy, do you say happy? Happy-ish?
Happy New Year,
Happy
Lashana
New...
Tova.
Oh, okay, so is Shana Tova just like the... It's,
It just
you
means
don't say...
good
But it,
year.
but okay, but it's kind of redundant if you say happy Shana Tova.
Oh yeah, no, it does.
Okay, got it.
Shana Tova
Sorry.
is the greeting. It's like,
Got it.
it's
I,
like good year.
I always say it terribly wrong. I'm like Shanatova, and it's like no.
That's
That's
how
what
I want to say
yeah.
it.
So that's not
Manitoba.
wrong. That's just like Yiddish inflected New York Hebrew.
Okay.
It's Shana Tova is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I was saying the same thing in the chat with Scott and Ben earlier, Genevieve, and
Okay.
But anyway, so we're having, because of the holiday and because we probably couldn't rope someone into getting a guest, but we didn't really try. We just decided to have a low key day, and I think that and cheesecake counts as cheese, and like cider counts as
And whiskey counts as cheese too.
cheese. Yeah. So the week looks like we've got a couple of people on.
Really? Who do we have booked?
Dominic Parker and Jay Van Bevel, who have a new book out, and asked to kind of come on the show. I actually don't know what the name of the book is. I forgot it. But they sent us a nice email, it looks like it's going to be a kind of a fun conversation. I'm familiar with Jay's work, but not with Dominic's. And then on Thursday,
Well, I just lost audio.
I did too. For you, Kate.
I think it was on Kate's end. Kate,
It's
talk?
saying you're muted, Kate. That's really weird.
Tech glitches are part of the show.
It's true.
The Crowdcast gods did not want to hear who our guest on Thursday is going to be.
I didn't mute myself. It muted on my own, and my ears, everything just cut out. That was really strange. Anyway.
Well, so what's going to happen on Thursday? We'll see if this is an omen by whether it happens again when you try to describe it.
Alexandra Brodsky, who does a lot of work, went to Yale Law School, and we were there at the same time. And she has a lot of work in Title IX, and she is the author of a new book that has, that is called Public Justice. It's called Sexual Justice. Sorry, excuse me. And she works at Public Justice, and she is basically did a lot of qualitative research talking to people who are accused in Title IX interactions and cases, and kind of talking about how it affects them and whether there's due process, without trying to kind of have the men's rights valence to all of it, and to kind of keep that out of it. So I think that it's going to be, I haven't read it yet, but I knew Alexandra when we were at school together, so it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
I think that's great. And so tomorrow I am not here for reasons of the holiday.
Okay.
But I am here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I was thinking of I want to have a conversation with Tom Nichols about his new book, which I will have finished reading by Friday. So I was thinking of inviting him then. Let me shoot him a note and just see if he's game for that.
Genevieve, you have no obligation to do anything for the next week, because you are going to be, I think, like
a little on call.
A little on call, as it were. But anyone you want to kind of have on for tomorrow, or you're thinking about? Anything you want to talk about?
there's a lot I want to talk about, but I was actually trying to remember we had a lot of ideas over a couple of guests that we wanted to come on. I think you wanted to have Alex Stamos on to come talk about Apple.
Yeah, the CSAM stuff.
Yes.
Right.
We should ask Alan Rosenstein if he wants to join for that, because he's been following it pretty closely.
Yeah, or we could just have Alan on. Like, it's been a while. It would be great to have him on. I was just talking to him the other day.
His beard is now longer than your hair.
No, it's not.
I'm sort of joking.
Wow, that's exciting.
He's very scruffy.
Great.
I actually think I'm going to go back and like make a list, because when we have conversations, particularly on cheese nights, we come up with a lot of really good ideas for guests, and then
we don't execute because it's hard, or I forget, or we forget.
But I'm gonna go make a list.
I used to write them down too, but I've become less good at that. That I think sounds great. I
am trying for later in the month to get this woman who is discussing beaver habitats in a National Geographic article and how they are like fire resistant. So I'm gonna hopefully see if I can get her to come on.
That would be
I read it and I was like, that is such a cool thing. So I'm gonna email again.
We need to bring back our Corvid people too.
Yeah, I think that's right.
We haven't heard from either Kaylee or Carl in a while, and in the more Corvids, less COVID department, that would be useful.
The most go ahead, Kate. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the most recent Rick and Morty referenced two crows, so I kept thinking about them. Actually, I was like, oh, cool.
I'm like behind on.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. But it's funny because we just started rewatching from season 1, and it's really good. I was thinking actually that it's been kind of a while since we've had like naturalist people on in that kind of like bring back the COVID, I got it right the first time. Corvid, not the COVID. But I was also kind of thinking that I watched really was crazy. It was a documentary called Fantastic Fungi that was all about, have you watched it?
I have not, but I think fungi are the most amazing. Fungi and slime molds are like the most amazing.
They're pretty cool.
I've been trying to grow, just to annoy Scott, I've been trying to grow morel mushrooms.
If you were like the one person that can grow morel mushrooms and it's all just to spite Scott Shapiro, like I feel like that would be like,
well, yeah. So I'm working on it. We're gonna know in an initial way in May, but then next May as well, because it may take 2 years. But what's one thing that's really cool about the morels is you plant them by distributing the spores, right? And then you feed them by folding compost into the soil that they're in. And the plant, of course, you can't see because it has no roots. It has no, it has no
mycelium.
Yeah, it's just this distributed thing through this dirt ecosystem, and nobody knows, particularly not Scott or David Gullove, what makes them decide, okay, this is a good time to sprout up. But mine are coming up in May, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, you should go and watch this. It was quite a good documentary, and then it goes in a really interesting direction, which it like kind of goes to the idea of kind of how the largest and oldest organisms in the world are these mushrooms, their connectivity and the way that they talk and kind of connect things to each other within a forest can create like communication networks that look and act very similarly to kind of like an internet type of thing.
That's so cool.
Or neurons in a brain. Like it's
maybe we should have like an all gross animals week on
sure,
an underappreciated animal week.
Spiders, snakes, worms, tapeworms,
Yes.
especially tapeworms.
Yeah.
Tapeworms are fascinating.
I know. All
less so
parasites
when
are
you have one.
I mean, I don't want one, but like they are fascinating.
Hold on, I have something to say about, remind me that I have something to say about parasites in a second. But I was going to finish up with this thing was that like all of a sudden it kind of goes from this very like mushrooms are everywhere, fungi is everywhere. This is one of the things that connects the world and has all these uses that we don't know about, to like a very like, and then in the 1960s we started experimenting with how it can cure depression and like all of these other ways that it can cure things. And then we outlawed it because we outlawed drugs. And it's kind of a very, it was like a, I mean, it's obviously, it's a total, like, it's a very different way of like kind of addressing what a mushroom could be to the world. And it was like at 1 second, it was like how big and beautiful and just kind of appreciating it. And then all of a sudden it was this like, but let's actually figure out how to harness them and use them. And I was there for both parts and on board, but it was just kind of a strange flow.
Let's do some mushroom episodes or fungi episodes, because we wouldn't want to leave out the important non-mushroom fungi.
So the other thing about parasites that I think is really fascinating.
I love parasites.
Yeah.
As long as they're parasiting on somebody other than me.
I was going to say, I don't know if you love all parasites, Ben.
Did you know that this is just a really great aside about parasites, that lice infect only humans? The louse is, there's a variant, a species that is canine lice, but the louse is adapted purely to live on our scalps.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's I think that's kind of, well, so that one of those things that is so amazing. So there was a researcher called, what is his name, is Richard Spolowski. He's at Stanford now, I think. He's a medical, he's an MD PhD, and he does all of this research in parasites. And he did this incredible study in which he basically showed that toxoplasmosis, which is like, you've heard of toxo, it's like in the feces of cats. And so the reproductive cycle of toxo requires it to go from basically to being ingested by a rat or a mouse, has to then be eaten by a cat, and it goes through the gut of a cat and then like gets pooped out in like the last stages, and then it starts all over again. And basically one of the things that's the life cycle of toxo, and one of the things that he discovered is that basically that in rats and mice that are infected with toxoplasmosis, it actually goes to their brains, from their gut into their brains, and changes their composition of their brains to make them not just not afraid of cats anymore, but to make them cat-philic. Like they have actually completely different, like they have like positive reactions to cat urine in the presence of cats, rather than, and not just cats, to other types of things like spaces. Like they don't run away in open spaces, and
That's
like
amazing.
they don't run away, and like all of this. And so like then he did kind of like, he started, the implication being for humans that are infected with toxo is that it has similar types of things. And so apparently he was doing this presentation at to a medical like school, and an ER doctor stood up and was like, "This is insane. I've always when I was in residency, my advisor told us to always test for toxo in any type of like high speed vehicle crash, like fatality, like before we did any type of testing on like the organs or gave the organs away, test to see if there's toxo." And apparently there was always more of a proclivity for there being toxoplasmosis in people that were infected with it, that were high risk seeking behaviors. And wow. So like, anyways, this is kind of this incredible anyways, it's just like, you think about something, you think about free will, and then you think about things like that, and I just feel it calls a lot of things into question about, how our brains react to things. So I mean,
I think we should have gross stuff week on In Lieu of Fun.
Totally.
We do toxoplasmosis, and yes, Shannon Edry, ringworm is not a worm. That is a misnomer. It is a fungal infection, and closely related, I believe, to the athlete's foot, although it presents differently. Yeah, so I think we should do a
That's a great idea. Maybe we don't have to do it for a whole. Well, I don't know. We can either organize it all in one week, or like just start bringing stuff in.
Yeah, it's like a special mini series on yuck. I love that idea.
Yeah, me too.
I want to do an episode on slime molds. I think they're the best.
I don't know anything about slime molds.
Slime molds can solve mazes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're amazing. And they're super interesting.
I've seen an orange one, I think, if I'm remembering correctly.
Slime molds are great. But they do have the word slime and molds in their names. So
bad branding.
Yeah, bad branding. All right, let's should we bring in audience members? See what people want to. So if you have gross stuff or good gross stories, this is a good time for them.
It could be in anything but viruses week.
Yeah. Well, viruses are not usually gross. They're too small to be gross.
I don't know. The ones that cause like
they're just gross in their effects.
Yeah.
But the organism themselves is pretty ordinary.
Yeah.
Richard, I'm going to bring you on, and then Daniel asks, 161,327 new COVID cases on September 5th, according to the New York Times. What do you think the chances are that the U.S. never reaches herd immunity? Happy Labor Day. Thanks, Daniel.
I have an answer to this question, which is I actually think we're pretty close to peak Delta right now. The numbers have been leveling off nationally for the last week or so. And I think we're going to start seeing. So one of the things about Delta is that it's so contagious that if you're not vaccinated, you're getting infected with it relatively quickly. And so I think the virus is going to run out of people to infect between the vaccinations and just the number of people who've been relatively recently infected. And so I think you're going to start seeing a significant ebb of Delta over the next few weeks. I say this as of course, a trained statistician and infectious disease specialist. But it actually doesn't happen that these wildly infectious diseases remain so, because we do actually build up significant immunity among people who are unvaccinated. And the tendency in all of these viruses is toward greater contagiousness and less lethality over time, because that's the life maximizing point for the virus. So I think the likelihood that we don't obtain something like herd immunity, at least to a manageable level, is pretty low. The question is how many people have to die along the way, and that's purely a function of vaccination rates.
And also assuming that it doesn't mutate again to something that the vaccine is less effective against. Yeah, which is the race that scares me.
Can we talk about?
Anne raises Anne Kornhauser raises a very important category of exceptions, which is malaria and other diseases that are endemic over long periods of time. And, you know, there are exceptions. They tend to be exceptions in, they tend to involve infectious agents that you can get more than once. And I do think the likelihood that we're going to see that with COVID is, you know, it's not that you can't get it more than once, but the when you fight it off, you acquire immunity for a certain period of time, and so the question is how immune is the broader population over any given period of time. And I do think we're going to see between the prevalence of the virus itself and the rate of vaccination, which is something in the 55% rate among adults anyway, is you know, going to create a habitat problem for the virus.
Can we talk about something that I'm really amazed there isn't more conversation about in the news and other, which is just how it was that India's cases were just going through the roof, and then they just cratered. Like, and the same, like Israel is like been having like this same kind of like, looks like they're going up and up, and then they just stop. Like, and there's
and the UK.
And the UK, and there's no consistency in the types of vaccines that they're using, or if they have vaccines at all. And I'm just kind of like, I'm not saying that's not a reason to not get vaccinated. Please don't misconstrue that in any way. But like why did it stop in India? Like, I just like, we just like don't know. And there's just like literally no one knows. And that's just, that's some of the stuff that I'm a little shocked that we're not spending more time talking about. And I don't know if it's because if you dig into the answers, people think that there might be some type of public like information that would like be bad for the campaign to vaccinate more people in the US or whatever else, or what. But it's just baffling to me.
Yeah, it is just baffling actually. And I you know, it gets well beyond my non-competence to talk about, so I'm not going to try. But I do think the numbers that we've seen that Daniel cites, where, you know, we went quite rapidly up to about 150,000 new cases per day, and then between 150 and 160, 165, it's been kind of very slow. I think the last 14 days have had an 8% increase, whereas before it was a 150% increase, right? I mean, the increase was very rapid and has slowed a lot. So I do think we're reaching, if it's not the peak of Delta, it's a peak of Delta. And certainly we're seeing decrease in some of the southern states that we're starting to drive it. So I think there's reason to be optimistic, unless, of course, you're unvaccinated, because if you're unvaccinated and you haven't gotten it yet, you're the virus's target. And so you should understand there's a big red target painted on your back, and there are fewer and fewer people with targets on them. So Delta is coming for you.
I mean, to Devin Nunes' lawyer's question, or someone said something about the reporting of things in COVID. I thought that I heard, did you hear that they are like finding out that it's like 4 times the number of people that died of COVID than like they initially reported? Like,
we should assume that these numbers are all wildly underreported. They're probably underreported in this country too. Mm-hmm. And the weaker a country's healthcare infrastructure is, the more the underreporting coefficient is going to be. And that's before you get to questions like, is the Chinese Communist Party intentionally underreporting numbers, which I'm quite confident that they were. So I do think you should assume that those numbers that, really stand for something big and round, like a whole lot, rather than for anything precise.
Yeah, no, I think that that's right. It just kind of like really, I don't know. Like, I just don't know why. So it's interesting as we're talking, is like we're kind of coming up on 20 years, obviously, with September 11th. And like everyone has like most people have where they were, or if they weren't around or don't remember, they have that too. But basically, like we have watched, Ben, and you've been a part of, we've both been a part, like the shaping of what the story and the narrative is, the historiography of September 11th. And of course, we all, so too are we all part of that with the pandemic. And so it's just kind of, I think that like having these two markers in my life personally, like September 11th and the pandemic, as like two very kind of like moments where you measure things from those points. I guess like for me, that it's kind of like, even in the last year, you've seen this kind of evolution of common knowledge or accepted knowledge, or the story of what is happening with the virus and how it's working and how it's taking shape and what's gone wrong and who has screwed up and like what governments have fucked up and what haven't, and like all of the things. And I just feel like it's unlike maybe with September 11th, this is just going to be such a long story. Like it's going to have such a long tail. Like it's going to have such a long tail of like what happened. And it's going to be so incredibly diverse, the stories, because every government reacted so differently, because the virus wasn't the same in every place, because people had different access to different things. And so I don't know, that's kind of just a little bit what I've been thinking. I don't know, that's kind of, it's weird that 9/11 is reminding me of like the moment that we're in now. But that's
I think it makes perfect sense, particularly because of the contrast in how America as a unit reacted, because we had an exterior foe. There was a lot of like patriotic discussion. There was a lot of like coming together as a country to fight this exterior person who was a threat. And because it was a person, an entity that was like a human entity, I felt like that was just so much more unifying. And now, oddly, it's not a human, it's a virus that we could unify against, but for political purposes, we've been just so fractured. And maybe that's oversimplifying, but...
How well do you remember, Genevieve, the atmosphere around 9/11?
Very vividly. It happened my first week of high school.
I mean, I think it is interesting how relatively divisive COVID is relative to 9/11. And I wonder if the reason for that is that we're a much more divided society now, or whether the reason for that is that
they were it was like just normal people going about their day. Like, I think that, right? Like, I mean, isn't that kind of like the reason?
Do you also think that it was because there was an end? Because it was a day, and there was an end, and now we have no like day or end, and it's ongoing. So the fatigue might be different. I mean, I don't know.
I also think there's an aspect of it that's there was an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And the virus is a shitty enemy.
Yeah.
Because it's non-corporeal, you can't bomb it. You actually can't even hate it. It doesn't have enough personality to be angry at.
That's so interesting. It's such a good point. Do you think that that's why that the pandemic has become so politicized? Because everyone couldn't aim their politicization at another group?
So imagine for a minute that the virus was a person, let's call it Osama bin Laden, right? We would direct all of our anger and fear at the person, and we would feel camaraderie in our anger at the person and our fury and our desire to get the person. But we don't have that. We have, the virus is, for all intents and purposes, an inanimate object. You can be angry at it, but what good does that do you? You can't get revenge on it. Even if you kill it, it's not satisfying in the way, in any kind of retributive sense. And so we argue instead about how the right way to handle it, which is in fact deflecting that anger and intensity of feeling onto each other.
And particularly with people who don't agree with how to handle it. And I would say that's also something that's causing a lot of ethical questions to be raised. And there's a lot of articles coming out about medical practitioners and compassion fatigue. And if you haven't taken steps, do you deserve the same level of care, which is directly opposed to the Hippocratic Oath? But these questions, I don't think we would have those circulating as broadly if we weren't putting the angst, the virus angst, against the individuals who are not taking the steps that we think or probably know would mitigate it.
Ben, I unmuted you. You're fine.
I think that's right. I think the virus is a very unsatisfying enemy. And we want, if you think about monster stories, which are kind of about this, right? We tend to invest the monster with a human-like cognition, right? Dracula is human not in capabilities or in desires, but in his personality. And I think we do that so that we can hate him. Because if it's just, if it's purely inanimate, it's actually much harder to gear up the emotional energy to oppose.
Yeah. I think that also just, you had left and right trying to come together over like 9/11, and you kind of had that here, but not really. Like, I don't think, like, particularly, and in fact, and I don't know. I think that you're completely right. I've just realized that Richard has been sitting there for like 10 minutes. Sorry, Richard. Hi.
Hello.
You're nice doing your backlit Daniel impersonation.
Well, I was actually trying to get more light, but alas. Let's see. No, that doesn't work. Okay, I'm doing backlit Daniel today. Hello. Happy Labor Day, everybody.
Thanks.
You too. I have a really burning question about this time of year. It's Labor Day, and that means we're supposed to put all this summer stuff behind us. And I've done something that I haven't done in a long time. I've gone the entire summer without eating gazpacho, and I love gazpacho, and I make gazpacho, and yet I haven't done it all summer. And
why not?
Yeah.
Are you my mother?
No, I'm just curious. You like
yes.
You like
yes.
it. You like making it.
Yeah.
And it bothers you that you haven't had it. Why?
I don't know.
This requires an explanation.
Well, I never planned to make it. I guess I just thought, oh, well, there's enough summer left. I could make it later. And so I procrastinated.
It's not too late. It's tomato season and pepper season.
Well, see, here's the problem, though. You're not supposed to eat it after Labor Day. And
what is it like? Wearing white?
Wearing white?
Yeah, exactly. And so now I'm like, I'm like, oh no, what's going to happen to me if I eat gazpacho like tomorrow?
Cereal Mom will come and get you.
I think you can undo it by doing it while wearing white.
Okay. Or see your
white linen suit.
Yeah.
So these are the things that, nobody would even see me eating gazpacho.
You don't have to shame eat it, Richard. You can eat it proudly.
I feel like, I'm just like, I'd be throwing the cosmos into disarray if I were to do this.
I want to return to first principles here. Where is the rule from that you can't eat gazpacho after Labor Day?
John has a joke about me always wanting, when it's hot out, gazpacho, and then always settling for a Bloody Mary because we walk around for like 20 minutes trying to find a place that has gazpacho and they never have any. And so I'm just like, fine, I'll just have a Bloody Mary. Maybe that's just what I wanted anyway.
But where does this rule come from?
Is it in the Pentateuch?
Not that I know of.
It goes along with all those rituals about what you can wear and can't wear after Labor Day. You're not supposed to wear a white dinner jacket after Labor Day, seersucker, all these sorts of things.
I
wear a dog shirt every day. So clearly I'm not somebody who is, a slave to the etiquette rules, but I hereby absolve you of the sin of
gazpacho,
non-seasonal gazpacho eating. I think you are like I can issue indulgences, I suppose. But I'm
actually finding. Oh, this is so funny! I'm finding all of these Labor Day gazpacho recipes.
Oh, yeah?
I think that you can. Yeah, I think that you can. I think you're fine. I mean, we're not going to judge you, Richard,
I don't have to warm it. I don't have to warm it.
No. I think
then you're just eating sauce.
Yeah.
You hereby have a year-long dispensation, and I see the very Reverend Hillary Livingston seconds my dispensation, and she's actually qualified to issue one.
She is indeed.
So I declare that you have until next summer, when, of course, the wrath of God will be upon your head if you don't eat gazpacho in season. You have a dispensation to eat gazpacho out of season.
Okay, well, I better fill up between now and next Labor Day.
Richard, I have one question for you that's actually from Jeremy. He asks it in the thing, but I don't know how to. I don't have experience to answer this, but I figured you might. Have you been to a theater at all recently, and what is the experience like compared to before COVID? And I wonder if you have been to see the theater to see any music.
I have not. I am still very. I'm reluctant to do anything with, in a crowded, enclosed space, and so I'm still going to wait on that.
I have a tip.
Yes.
So, Richard, you should look for. I don't know if they have them in Philly, but they definitely have them in New York. They're doing these like candlelight music nights, and so yes, and so they have them extremely socially distanced. You have to prove vaccination before, everyone's masked, and we got to go to one a couple weeks ago, and it was fantastic. So check out the candlelight music. Yeah, that would be a possible option, but no pressure. Just maybe a toe in the pool.
Do they serve gazpacho?
I think you can bring your own.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
You'll have to check the rules.
I think having, in this era of food truck cultures, I think we should have a gazpacho truck.
A cold soup truck.
Yeah, that just goes around and serves various gazpachos in cups that you
I
drink.
love cucumber, dill,
yeah.
and yogurt soup. It is so good with like a little bit of sherry vinegar.
I like watermelon gazpacho too.
So last
Oh,
summer, I was making a lot of cold soups last summer, and I would come in after a hot day, after being outside when it was hot, and I was drinking this stuff as if it were Gatorade or something. It was great. It was so refreshing. And,
yeah,
one of the best things you could drink.
totally. Great seeing you, Richard.
Good to see you.
Hi, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your soup.
I think we need more questions at that high level of sophistication and peculiarity, especially ones that require quasi-religious dispensations from us.
I agree. So Ben, have you been to the theater though?
I have not. I have been to two largish events, both of which were outdoors, however. And I have not been to anything inside at all, like with more people than can fit in a small restaurant with appropriate social distancing. Hello, Paula.
Hi, Paula. How was your first week of school?
I think it was great. I've had plenty of fun.
Did you pour more stuff on yourself?
No. I had my first assignment, and I'm pretty sure I double checked my name about 10 times to see that I didn't misspell it. It was that worried.
That doesn't seem like the word on the assignment you'd be most likely to misspell.
Yeah. You want me to tell you how my freshman year in college, I took a English class with the dean of the college and wrote my first paper and misspelled Forrester of E.M. Forrester throughout the entire paper. So I got a B-, which is actually, I think, fairly okay considering the fact that I had such an egregious error at the beginning of my thing. So you're fine.
I just think I tend to do that thing where it's do you ever use your calculator to calculate really stupid stuff 10 plus 5 just to make sure that you're not totally just off, and sometimes I'm I just want to make sure I'm not misspelling my name.
I once put back when I was a young reporter at Legal Times, I wrote a story about something Janet Reno did when she was Attorney General, and I went home having put the paper to bed with a panic attack that Janet Reno didn't exist.
No, you told me that story before. It made me feel much better.
It was completely pathological, and I was sure that it was going to be what Anne Kornhauser's friend Kate Boo used to call the career-ending mistake, which is the mistake that, was totally avoidable, that's going to wreck you and finish you off. And I was convinced, by the time I got home, I was dripping with sweat, and convinced that I had made the career-ending mistake because Janet Reno did not, in fact, exist. Turns out the story ran and Janet Reno did exist and really was Attorney General and really did the thing that I said she did. And I did not end my career. And, there it is.
I do think this came up in an episode where you and Scott, I think improvised and had a anxiety dream episode where people shared their anxieties or nightmares that they have. Because I do recall you maybe saying that one.
Maybe. I think it came up too because I think we talked about, maybe. I feel like we talked about all of the anxiety that goes into something being published. And yeah, I think that maybe it was when Scott finished his book. Maybe that's what we were talking about. Maybe that was it, I think, or something.
Yep.
Paula.
My first question or second question?
Well,
do them both.
Yeah, do them both. Go for it.
Okay. So I'll start with the lighthearted one. What are your favorite background noise things to have when you work, TV shows to YouTube videos to artists? Because I feel like that's 90% of how I get my work done, and I feel like it's kind of a cool part of people's personalities to know what interesting things they have in the background on.
Well, what kind of work are you talking about? Reading and writing, Or are you talking about like chores or
No,
cooking
like
or like
your most intense like work thoughts, like you're writing a really important paper?
I am going to go first and say no noise at all.
Oh,
Absolute. Like I can't even have background noise. It's distracting. Like people coughing in a library, like actually I will like throw something at them. But I can't work in a library because actually also I am too uncomfortable and and feel like if I want water or like want to get warmer or like want some food, or have to go to the bathroom, I just like I hate it. So like when I'm really working on something for like many days, like my entire workspace, just like, it's like papers everywhere, like some type of crazy person. And I just go into a complete zone.
Does this include like the background noise that you could hear from like your AC or something like that too?
I don't love it.
Okay. I actually love that noise, but I know some people that hate that noise.
No, I like that noise. There are certain types of weird droning noises I like. The heater clicking on in the winter, like the air conditioner kicking on in the summer, like someone showering in the room next door or like in the bathroom next door or something. I love like that noise. But I can't, but no, that's not, I just like total silence. That is the total opposite of me when I am doing physical things like cooking or whatever else. In those situations, I serially have like tons of TV on or podcasts or music. So we can talk about that. Yeah. What about you, GDF?
I'm pretty similar. I would say the one thing that I do require but don't have anything coming through is I need to have headphones in, just even as like a signaling thing for people to not talk to me. So that's like if I have to be thinking or doing anything analytical, it's no noise. And if I'm doing research, it's maybe like classical music or no words. It can't be words because I will start writing the words for like in my notes, which is not great. But that's my backgrounds.
I trained myself when I had small children to be able to write under any circumstances anywhere. And that was a very deliberate thing because I had to write every day. I was writing editorials for the Post at the time, and I just didn't have the luxury of requiring any specific conditions. And so I taught myself to write with whatever background conditions there were. I do not intentionally distract myself with music or other sound, but I don't. But you could put me in Grand Central Station and with a laptop, and I would do just fine. But I don't intentionally listen to other stuff. I think my preferred writing environment is a coffee shop with a certain level of ambient background noise, but not stuff that I will particularly focus on. When I am doing work that doesn't require my mental attention or doesn't require my vocabulary, my writing mind, I tend to listen to podcasts, and I tend to do that, when I'm doing the dishes or cleaning something, which I do rarely, or working outside or something. But when I'm writing, I generally don't listen to anything actively, but I really try to avoid avoid needing a particular set of environmental conditions, because though I could create them now, I couldn't for many years.
I think I'm going to have to up my training.
Yeah. So my second question is, and obviously this is partly because, I was born before 9/11, but I obviously wasn't like fully, I was like a year old. And so I was wondering, like, what do you think would have happened if 9/11 had occurred when there was social media? Because just thinking about it, I could be totally wrong, and it could have, like, it could be capped out on the most traumatizing thing ever. But I feel like thinking about, like, for example, the like slow drip, like not even comparable, but like the slow drip of news that happens on Twitter when something happens, like breaking news, which like keeps you on your phone dead scrolling. Like if that would have happened on that day with people able to like capture what's happening live, seems to me like it would have been like taken to like, if possible, an even exponentially more traumatic event, just because of the way that you would have gotten a slow drip of news rather than cable news having to gather everything and then give it to you in a lump afterwards.
I think that there would have been there were a couple of videos that circulated, and they all circulated via the cable news channels. And they would have circulated via user-generated content platforms if people had had the capability of really taking video on their phones the way they have now and uploading it. That just didn't exist.
Or even just text on their phones.
Yeah.
You know, if you imagine that half of those people on those flights had been on Twitter, which I think would have happened, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention hundreds of people in everybody who was evacuating the two buildings would have been live tweeting it, or at least 1 in every 5 or 10 of them would. And
wow.
A bunch of the people who were trapped in the upper floors, I don't know if you guys remember the falling man video.
Of course. It's one of the most, it's moving, and like there's an incredible Esquire story about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in a modern context, that person may well have had the option of tweeting before he jumped.
Yeah.
And I do think the whole thing would have been, I mean, it was super immediate and, I mean, impossibly painful to watch as it was, but we didn't really hear from the people on the planes or the people. I mean, some of them we got.
There used to be
audio.
Phones on the back of the headsets that you could use with your credit card, and some people used those to call people. I think that's how they called people, was like using those, or they had cell phones.
Yeah, there was some audio of phones that got released later, but I think it would have been much more. You would have felt much more present than you do than we did, and that would have made it much worse.
There was also a lot of misinformation that day from my perspective, because we were So they tried to isolate us immediately because we had a lot of students whose parents worked downtown. And so they had you, if your parents were working downtown, they told you to go to specific areas, and they were trying to figure out who would be directly affected, who was safe, and they didn't have that information. They locked us out of the computer lab so we wouldn't have access to the news. And there were just stories circulating that the Brooklyn Bridge had been bombed. There were stories circulating that were just something bad had happened, but you didn't know what it was. So, and then they addressed it, but the way they addressed it was very dry. A couple of my friends who did lose parents that day had been taken out of the school early, and they didn't tell the rest of the student body until later, because they were really only concerned if, which understanding, like they're never going to be able to capture everybody's losses, but they were just primarily concerned if you had a parent who was at risk that day. And so it was just a lot of confusion. I can't imagine trying to control that information now. You'd never be able to.
Right.
No, I mean, and I don't understand. I mean, you would think we have content moderate. I mean, you get like a tiny, tiny sliver of the fear and kind of craziness of it, like a tiny one, like watching what happened on 1/6 live.
I think
with
like,
cell phone videos coming out. Kind of.
Point, like you made that tweet today about content moderators. Like, I can't imagine like the chaos. Like I remember one time like flying back from somewhere, and afterwards, there were stories about plane crashes after I got back off a plane. And I told my dad, like, if I had seen or heard about that plane crash before I got on the plane, I probably wouldn't have gotten on the plane. And I just can't imagine, like, to your point, how quickly like information circulates. I know, like, for example, if you're on a plane, like, I think I'm correct, like some information doesn't come in through their TVs, like they censor certain types of information. But like, I just can't imagine like how chaotic things would have been. Actually, like, I mean, physically, like not just on the internet. Like, I mean, like from things like things shutting down, literally.
Things shut down. Things did shut down in 9/11.
Right.
Because not just in New York. They like
had before. Like I know I have older siblings who said like we didn't go to school. Like school was like done for the day. Like everyone went home, and
we went from room to room and watched like like all of our teachers had just like the TV on, and we just watched the news and walked from room to room, and you could just leave if you wanted to. I don't think
my generation has ever experienced that before. Like things were like everyone's gonna stop right now, and like nothing's happening.
I don't think we've experienced anything like it
before or
after. Other time either.
Yeah.
So I was in the Washington Post newsroom that day.
Oh my God.
And it was when I left that evening, all of Washington was entirely gridlocked. And I had to walk home because there was no transportation. The metro was shut down. And the streets were completely gridlocked. And so I walked, it was several miles, and I walked home, and the entire way was gridlocked traffic and nobody honked. I mean, it was...
That's so eerie.
It was so eerie. And the next day when I came to work, there were guys, with machine guns on every street corner in downtown. It was...
there were flags everywhere. Do you remember that? Like everyone put out a flag. Like there was just flags everywhere. Like it just like I was living in the suburbs, and like there were people just would like line their entire lawn with flags on every major, and it was just, I don't know. That was just like it. And I remember it also just being so quiet. I think Ben's exactly right.
Yeah, it was people, everybody was, I mean, there was some sense in which it was quite lovely. Everybody was helping each other. I've never seen this town kind of more, I wouldn't say united, but because there wasn't anything political about it yet. Mm-hmm. It was just people helping people. But look, when the towers came down, we thought 40 or 50,000 people had been killed. People forget this, but 50,000 people worked in those towers, and we had no idea how many of them had gotten out. And so the estimated number of people killed started like astronomically high and then lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered. And so I remember when it got below 3,000, I was like so relieved.
Yeah.
And now we hear, 3,000 people or 2,900 people were killed. How awful. But, I remember a weird feeling of relief when we crossed below 10,000.
I remember
5,000, right? And, it was like, a lot of people got out, and a lot of, the people forget how many of the firefighters who died when the buildings collapsed because they were getting people out. Yeah. And that was actually a remarkably successful operation. which was done completely without planning and so it would have been unspeakably more awful had there been live social media of it.
I think it's a great. Sorry, go ahead, Genevieve.
No, you first, Kate. I can wait.
Oh no, I was going to wrap. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that one of the things that also, going back to our other conversation a little earlier about rallying points, that I think was pretty handled okay, and it got a little bad, but Jon Stewart's done a really good job of keeping it present of mind. Was a lot of the firefighters who got very, very sick because of the different things that they inhaled that day. He's been really advocating for them and even still continues to advocate for them. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of one of those things that if you hear about it, most people's reactions are still, oh yeah, we should do the right thing because that happened. It's not like, oh, well.
Oh, it's unbelievable that some of those people can't get reasonable care and that it requires advocacy. Yeah. It's just crazy.
We got to wrap because you have to go, Ben. And
Indeed.
But Paula, I think that's a great question, and you kind of actually just food for thought, guys, and maybe we should talk about it on the chat, but the idea of like doing a kind of a day of remembrance on Friday and maybe having people come in and share their stories and kind of create, if they want to, and talk about where they were. We'll just maybe, I don't know, it's something to just think about. We can talk about it, whether, I mean, I also don't kind of, it's a very hard day. It's a very real day. I don't know, for me and for a lot of the people I know that lost people. And so I just like, it's something that we can talk about, but thank you for bringing it up, Paul. I think it's a really great question and I hadn't thought about it in that way before. So thanks as always. We will be back tomorrow with We Don't Know Who in 22 hours and 56 minutes from now. And until then, Ben, Happy New Year. And
we don't have fun anymore, but we do have lunar New Year cycles that do not have anything to do with the solar New Year from various religious, non-majority religious groups in the United States.
I really, because just in case one of them poops out, then we've got the other one back up.
You got your Jewish calendar, you got your Islamic calendar, which, they handle the difference with the sun differently. Your Islamic calendar actually doesn't correct for it. Your Jewish calendar has a leap month every 4 years to fix the problem. Different approaches there. But the point is, you get your Ramadan, you get your Rosh Hashanah, and you can't predict based on the solar calendar when they're going to show up.
Yeah. Keeping
Happy
it
New
interesting.
Year.